Father, I just pray that you would anoint Ian now. I just pray that you would just take his words, take his preparation, but Lord, like the little boy with the loaves and fishes, take his offering and make it into something special. Speak through his words, speak into every heart what you want each of us to hear, Lord.
Yes, Lord.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Encounters with the risen Jesus. As we just heard, Pilate couldn't find any fault in him, Herod couldn't kill him, death couldn't handle him, and the grave couldn't hold him. We celebrate today, yeah, that's my king, that's my king. What I want to do today is just to think about people who encountered the risen Christ in those first few days and first few hours. And I'm going to pick, 4 examples, 5 people. First of all, Mary. So we have Mary. This is Mary Magdalene. And I'd like to suggest that Jesus met her in her pain. She had just witnessed the horrific death of the Jesus she loved. She's faithfully coming this morning to minister to her broken dreams. She thought Jesus was the one. Now she thinks someone has desecrated his tomb and stolen the body. I can't begin to imagine the pain she is feeling. And you have this beautiful encounter with Jesus, who's standing, she thinks he's the gardener. She just doesn't recognize him. I don't know if that was cognitive dissonance, they call it, where you're just not expecting to see, or whether she just had too many tears in her eyes. But you have this beautiful moment where Jesus only needs to say one word, Mary. And I think he said that so caringly. And suddenly she recognized and realized, yes, it was him. She knew he died, and yet here he was. And he meets her exactly where she is. There's no, didn't you realize? It was just that simple calling of her name, a very personal encounter. And then, what does he do? He actually commissions her to go and tell the men. Now, this is an interesting thing with the Bible, because you didn't do it that way in those days. In that time and in that culture, I'm afraid the words of a woman were worth nothing as a witness. And yet, so if I was going to write this story that people could look back on 2,000 years later, I'd have had a man doing it. And, the truth of it is there, that actually, no, he chooses Mary. And I love that. I love that he honors Mary in that way. So, how about you? Maybe you're feeling pain about something. Actually, what I'd say is the risen Christ wants to meet you right where you are. He doesn't expect you to be somewhere else. He meets you right where you are. How about Peter in his shame? You remember Peter, hot-headed Peter, who always said, I won't leave you, I won't forsake you. If others deny you, I won't. And yet, he had denied Jesus just before the crucifixion. 3 times he'd said, I don't know him, I don't know him, I don't know him. And again, the brokenness and shame of that. And even, he's, if you read on in the story, even after he's been told that Jesus is alive, he goes back to fishing. Because I think that he feels that actually he's blown it. He's finished. Because he let Jesus down. But actually, what does Jesus do? Jesus calls him back in exactly the same way he called him at the beginning of the Gospels. He said, put down your nets on the other side. And then they got this huge catch, and he suddenly recognized him. But also, if you read through and I encourage you to read the story later, Jesus encounters Peter where? On a beach, obviously, because Peter's been out in the boat, and Peter was there. And what does Jesus call out? He calls out, you stupid lot, didn't you know I was going to be here? No, he doesn't. He calls out, friends. No judgment. And he cooks them breakfast. This is the risen Christ, and yet he meets them exactly where they are in fellowship. And then I'm sure we all know the story of how Jesus says to Simon Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know I love you. Do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know I love you. Do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know I love you. And there was something about the 3 times denied, 3 times affirmed. But Jesus, again, there are times when I feel I've blown it. I've really messed up, and I can't, I've let God down. And yet, what does Jesus do to Peter? He meets him exactly where he is, and he recommissions him. And he says, now go and feed my sheep. So you might feel that there's something in your past that you just feel shame about. Again, the invitation this morning is that the risen Christ wants to meet you in person and deal with that shame and give you his love and his recommissioning. Who else did? You see, Thomas. We all know doubting Thomas. But again, it's a very familiar story. Most of the rest of the disciples have met Jesus, and Thomas wasn't there, so he said, unless I meet him, unless I can put my fingers through the holes in his hands and my hand in his side, I won't believe it. But again, when Jesus comes, when Thomas is there, does Jesus scold him? Does he tell him off and say, oh, you unbelieving so-and-so? No, he doesn't dismiss his doubts. He says, just come, do what you need to do to understand and to have your questions answered, your doubts have your doubts resolved. So he gently allows Thomas to satisfy himself. Now, tradition has it that doubting Thomas, who some people are inclined to dismiss as, doubting Thomas, walked from Palestine to India preaching the gospel, and he was martyred there in India. That's quite a powerful life to live with your doubts, isn't it? But the reality is we all have doubts. But Jesus says, bring those doubts to me. The invitation is come and meet the risen Christ. He understands your doubts, and he will allow you to satisfy yourself. And then how about the 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus? Again, a very familiar story to all of us, I'm sure. There they are walking along. Jesus just comes alongside them, and they don't recognize him. And he quietly takes them through, it seems like he takes them through the whole of the Old Testament, explaining, because they were saying, don't you know what's happened? Jesus, we thought he was Messiah, and now he's died. And he gently takes them through, just giving them the answers to all their questions, gently correcting their misunderstandings of the story. And I love it when they reach where they were going to. Jesus just sort of says, okay, I'm going now. And And they have to say, oh, no, come in and eat. And Jesus does have history of doing that, by the way. I don't know if you remember, but in Mark's version of Jesus walking on water, it says that he was walking past the boat, not walking to the boat, but it actually says he was walking past the boat. So, hi, guys. And they had to call him. And sometimes that's right for us, that actually we can see Jesus, but we have to say, come on in, Lord. Come and be with me. And in that story, we need to understand that actually sometimes we miss out by not inviting the risen Christ in to our meal, into our ordinary. So the risen Christ wants to meet us. I'm just going to read a bit more of what we just heard from that. Don't need that yet. He supplies strength for the weak. He's available for the tempted and the tried. He sympathizes and he saves. He strengthens and sustains. He guards and he guides. He heals the sick. He cleanses the lepers. He forgives sinners. He discharges debtors. He delivers the captive. He defends the feeble. He blesses the young. He serves the unfortunate. He regards the aged. He rewards the diligent. And he beautifies the meek. Do you know him? Do you know him? You see, the message of the cross is that God, the God who made you and made me, meets with you and meets with me in our suffering. And the message of the resurrection, that he doesn't leave us there, but he rescues us from it. Whatever you're going through, whatever your pain or shame, your doubt or your questions, whatever your struggle, whatever your darkness, wherever your dreams have died, the risen Christ comes and meets you in that place. And he doesn't patronize those feelings. He doesn't brush them under the carpet. He doesn't deny them. He doesn't minimize them. In fact, if anything, he amplifies them, because he wants to deal with them. He comes in deep empathy because he is the Paschal Lamb. He has died. He has suffered. Nicky Gumbel, who those of you who are Alpha will know his voice, said this: the resurrection of Jesus is rooted in history. There are plenty of sources outside the Bible that talk about the resurrection of Jesus. Even the ones that didn't want to admit it at the time, they still talk about it. So the resurrection of Jesus is rooted in history. It is grounded in the scriptures. It was talked about in the Old Testament. We've got so much in the New Testament to prove it. And it is confirmed in Christian experience. So it's rooted in history, it's grounded in the scriptures, it's confirmed in Christian experience. There are 2.6 billion people in this world who share that experience. Even here in France, there are record numbers of people turning to the risen Christ. Last Easter, just after last Easter, I think it was, we mentioned the record-breaking number of baptisms in the Catholic Church. Here in France, 2025 has seen a further 45% increase in adult baptisms. That's on top of a 30% increase the previous year, and a 33% increase in teenage adolescent baptisms. More than 17,800 people are being baptized in the Catholic Church this Easter. Here in France, God is on the move. And the invitation today is to walk, for each one of us, to walk further and deeper into that experience yourself. Lucy's going to lead us in a simple act of remembrance that Jesus told us to do, in a simple breaking of bread. As you take the bread and wine, I encourage you to invite the risen Christ further and deeper into your own experience. that you may have your own encounter with him in this special moment.